I have dropped my worries, nowhere to go, nothing to do, no longer in a hurry.
Chào mừng mọi người đến với Du Học Chữa Lành. Đây là một podcast mà mỗi tuần Hằng sẽ được trò chuyện với những người Việt Nam đang sinh sống và làm việc tại nước ngoài. Mong rằng những câu chuyện và các góc nhìn đa chiều sẽ giúp mọi người có thể hiểu thêm và tìm được sự đồng cảm về cuộc sống ở hải ngoại. Hello everybody and hi Tuấn Anh. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, and I want to welcome you to the podcast Du Học Chữa Lành, and thank you so much for spending time with us. I know you have been outside of Vietnam for so many years, so English might be better for you, but if it's possible, could you give us a short introduction about yourself, maybe in Vietnamese, so everybody can know?
Sure, I'll be happy to. So, tên Tuấn Anh là Trần Vũ Tuấn Anh, sinh ở Sài Gòn. Bỏ nước Việt Nam đi lúc 5 tuổi, thành ra tiếng Việt của Tuấn Anh rất là kém, thành ra cái interview này sẽ là bên tiếng Anh.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that's a short, but we all know your name and we know when you start living abroad. And can you tell us a little bit where you are now and what you are doing at the moment?
Sure. So I've been fortunate to, currently I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Azul. Azul is a 3D printing company here in Chicago, a Northwestern spin-off. So I really love 3D printing.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I love like how the 3D printer can create like different creature, and it looks so beautiful and so fascinated. And I knew that you have been through so many different countries. So my very first question is, what is your usual breakfast when you go in Vietnam or maybe in Europe and now in America? What are the differences?
Sure. But I have to say, so in 97, I was able to get back to Vietnam for an internship, pratique. So I did that for 6 months in the spring of 97. And my favorite breakfast is always hủ tiếu, because it was so light with egg. I don't think either hủ tiếu or phở it will always be my favorite breakfast. No bacon, egg, and cheese can ever beat hủ tiếu or phở. So I am truly, I am Vietnamese, and I'm proud of being Vietnamese, and I enjoy actually anywhere I go on vacation. Even when I was in Argentina, Buenos Aires, I still found a Vietnamese restaurant with a good pho, and we were there for 2 weeks, but we probably went at dinner there 6 times. The spring rolls were good too. So food is very important
Oh,
to me.
wow. Yeah, definitely. And now when you live in the US, like what do you usually have for breakfast? And I bet it's not hủ tiếu or phở.
So if I had that option, I would, but I live south of Boston, so I mainly have a bagel with some vegetable cream cheese, something light, or cereal. So that's boring. That's I could have had a lot more in Hanoi or Saigon.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like very American breakfast, with cheese and bacon and burger or toast. Yeah, and yeah, thank you so much. And I really believe that, our Vietnamese cuisine is kind of the best cuisine in the world. I don't want to be brag about it, but we all know that. And yeah, so can you please tell a little bit about, more journey, like where you are at now? Because I know that you have been to like different country, or you study in different continent, for example. So just briefly a short story about you.
Sure, it goes much deeper. So yes, I live in Copenhagen, Denmark for 23 years. I had the opportunity to study at the University of Salford at the EU Erasmus Student Exchange Program. I was able to work in Tokyo, and then I always wanted to go to the US. But I think the fundamentals where I came from is my father's side is from Vĩnh Long, and my mother's side is Bến Tre. So I always envisioned as a boat immigrant, a boat refugee, that if they didn't leave, I would probably still live in the Mekong Delta. So when you think of, if my parents didn't do that, when you come from nothing, when you know that you will probably take care of rice paddies in Mekong Delta, or go fish, or do something, probably live in Gang Tho, where my uncles were, then you figure out, well, that would have been my life. Then what else could I be? So with that always in the back of my mind, I'm always adventurous. I say this is a second life, a new life, and I'm gonna make the most out of it. I think that's where the drive comes from. When you see this image of a Vietnamese boy on an ox with a flute and really being Yahweh. So that could have been me, right? So when you come from that, that was my intended life. Now I have a second shot. So when you do that, you go, how far can I go? And you have to be brave and adventurous. And when you have a chance and opportunity, say yes and find out how to do the job later on. But that has enabled me in the core how I got to travel so much is say yes and then figure out how to actually do the job.
Ah, okay. It's very interesting. Like you saying yes before, you consider whether or not you could do the job, and you figured out how to do the job later. And yeah, but I think it should takes a lot of bravery or encourage in order to do so.
Well, it yes, it does. It does take some self confidence, but if you always look in the back that I was supposed to be this, so no matter what I accomplish, then it will always be more. So yeah, you do need to be a little bit brave, but remember, we as Vietnamese have the um, people have the opinion that Asian and in particular Vietnamese, we are very hardworking. So while we might not be as educated as our competitor or peers, we will outwork them. So I might not be the smartest guy, but I'm willing to work harder than them. So when they work from 9 to 5, if I work 7 to 7 or 7 to 10 p.m., whatever they accomplish in a year, I would do in 8 months. So you can compensate for that, but you have to be willing to do the work. So if you're willing to do the work, you will find a way.
Mm. Yeah, I think that is very important message. Like you say yes, and then you have to commit to what you have agreed with. And yes, you said that you live in Denmark for like 23 years, which is a long, long time. And I'm only curious, okay, what made you wanted to move to the US after that such a long time? Because I believe Denmark is also a beautiful country.
Um, I blame it on my brother. So in '79 we were three boys. Later I have another brother. So four boys. But we were three boys in '79. We are both refugee. We live in Malaysia. We picked up by the Malaysian Coast Guard. So a lot of overseas Vietnamese actually went through Pulau Bidong. I was there
Mm-hmm.
in the spring of '79. So we came to Denmark because my youngest brother had an ear infection. He was still a baby, 1 year old, and he needed medical attention. So my destiny, we were like everybody else, wanted to go to the US. If not, then there's Australia or maybe Germany and France. But because of my younger brother needed medical attention, Denmark happened to be a perfect country for a overseas Vietnamese, a boat refugee. It's very socialistic. So that's how we came to Denmark. And lived there for 23 years. So when I was barely six, you can imagine my personality is very Danish. I don't look it, but I grew up amongst the Vikings.
Okay.
So my mannerism, a lot of the way I think, schooling, military, education is all Danish. To answer your question, why leave? Because in my heart, I always felt that my destiny, I was supposed to go to US. I did a pit stop
Mm.
in Denmark, but about 4,000 Vietnamese live in Denmark. But how do you get to Denmark? It's not like you just buy a plane ticket and you go work to the US. There's a lot of paperwork. But I was so by having a dream and having stayed true to it, even in the yearbook of high school gymnasium, it still reads today. When I went last year of high school, that my friends we write about each other, and they said we will probably find him in the U.S. I didn't know how, but I found a way, and my way was uh, work for a company that happens to have an office in the U.S. and having a company intra transfer, and therefore giving me a working permit. So I was lucky that stick stay true to your dream, never forget your dream, and be open and adventurous. I joined a company in '99, and 4 months later, we got acquired by Intel for 1.25 billion cash in the spring of 2000 before the whole industry crashed. Everybody was a millionaire except me because I only joined 4 months ago. But because of that, Intel needed people to train them. So I joined the Intel sales organization, and I got my mentor in Intel Denmark to sponsor me to boost the sales in the US and deploy me. So I owe a lot to my mentor to enable me to move to the US. That was the stepstone, but I did have to disclose and agree that I would not request Intel to give me a green card. So I knew it was only temporary. So
Okay.
I knew that I would need to jump again to get H1B and eventually a green card sponsor. Without a sponsor, you will not be able to stay in America.
Hmm. So, are you have do you have a green card now, or you have a American passport, or what type of legally paper that you are having now?
Sure, on this topic. Okay. So the funny story is, um, the girl I met in '97 when I went back to Hanoi. I grew up in Saigon, but in '97, I met my now wife. She was Price Waterhouse. She was in Oklahoma City, also a Southerner. Um, so to answer your question, it's kind of funny. I'm very proud. We actually got married in '07, '07, '07. So what's that? Many years ago, 15 years ago. I
Okay.
could have I could have gotten my citizenship through her, but I refused.
Okay.
I came to the US by
Wow.
myself, and through 3D printing companies that I work for, I actually got a desktop metal to eventually sponsor my green card, and I got the green card. So even uh, after 5 years of green card, you're actually allowed to apply yourself to citizenship. But I had to delay that until the Danish government changed the law to allow overseas Danes to have dual citizenship. So I had to wait even further so that I can give my son dual citizenship. So my son Sebastian, he can work anywhere in Europe. He has dual citizenship.
Wow, that's wonderful.
But not
Like,
to
I
my
think
wife.
that
I will not give her the satisfaction. I'm not in the US because she enabled me. I did it by myself. You got to be proud of something.
yeah, definitely. And it also, I think it's very good for your son that, he have an opportunity to work wherever he wants, even in like Europe or in America. I think that a huge opportunity for him. And you mentioned that you were like a immigrant child, and can you tell a little bit about some difficulty that you have faced when you were small, if you could remember, or even when you were a teenager or adult?
Yeah. So, but overall, I want to say that Denmark could not have been a better choice. It was so awesome when you compare it to the US. It's free education, medical, dental. It's just how it's up to you. Do you good grades and you get into good schools. So it's kind of funny to answer your question. When I just came to Denmark, I don't speak Danish. I was almost 6, so I had an interpreter with me in kindergarten. So that was kind of
Wow.
weird. So I was like, okay, I better learn Danish really fast. Um, but I would say the Danes are very kind. They've done a lot of work with Danita in Denmark. But in Denmark themselves, in my class, there were 24 kids in a typical school. Elementary, one is black, one is me, and then the rest are all tall Vikings. Uh, so you do stand out. I was not lucky to have at least two Vietnamese in the classroom. I was like, so you really learn to function or make it work to be the oddball, the one that stands out, the one that doesn't fit. Um, and yes, it was tough, but that also forced you with the integration. So you became very Danish because you have to blend in and get along. Um, but I saw two kind of reactions to that. One is you cave in and forget your identity, or two, you are proud of your identity because you are different is actually a strength, and you can speak multiple languages. They only speak one. Um, but still blending in. So that can enable you, depending, it's always depending on your attitude. Doesn't matter how educated you are, but that can turn to a skill set of yours to adapt, so that you can adapt in this environment, whether you like it or not. You can adapt. That has helped me later on to adapt to work, to study amongst the Brits, or working amongst the Japanese in Tokyo in 2001, and now in America. But having this skill of adapting to the environment, um, well, it goes back a little bit to Bruce Lee, right? Be like water. You have to flow. Don't fight it. Just go with it. Um, and it takes practice.
Mm. Yeah, and I think you mentioned about the forget your identity, but I have a feeling when you was 5 or even 6, I think it's too small to know what your identity is it?
Yeah. So identity issue did not come was not really prevalent until in the teenage years. You're right. We were living like in a bubble. Both my parents are Vietnamese, so you can do whatever you do in daycare and all that, and school. You can speak Danish, but at home we were never allowed to speak Danish. I've never had a conversation with my parents in Danish. So that forces us a little bit to eat Vietnamese food, go to culture, celebrating that. So in when we're at home, it is a Vietnamese bubble. So we still have that culture. So I felt still very Vietnamese. As soon as I step out the door, I can speak Danish. But it was more of when you become a teenager where everybody's trying to find themselves regarding gender and race, that question, who am I, there was more towards the teenage year. And I felt that I on top of that, of identity, is also the social environment. You have to be in the right environment. So not a lot of people know, but there's something called a Jantelov. It's a very Danish, very Scandinavian, very socialistic, that they don't celebrate individual accomplishment. They prefer to celebrate in a group, rewarding the group, the community, not individual achievement. So I knew, since I could have been a farmer on a rice paddy in the Mekong Delta, I'm like, I'm out of here. I need to get out of Denmark. I don't want to be in a country where they not encourage me to be the best that I can be, go as far as I can. It's like adios. So I always knew I wanted to get out. Um, Unfortunately for Denmark, that's also brain drainage, that all the talent will leave. But I always had, through my entire life, I always had, I think more when I was a teenager, I wanted to go to US, but my dream was, who doesn't want a convertible, a beach house, and live in California and see palm trees, right? So that was my American dream. But it's always because of a girl. So this girl, Tao Pham, she studied at Boston University. She's in Boston, so I ended up living in Boston. It's just like being in Europe. So it's not what I intended, but it's kind of funny. If it, I didn't give up my dream, being California, having an old convertible and learn surfing and all that. Actually, Boston happens to be the 3D printing capital of the world because of MIT. Most 3D printing manufacturers. So if it wasn't for her, I would not have discovered 3D printing, and that's why I often honestly say that 3D printing is my accidental passion, because I didn't knew it about it, and I'm an engineer, and I didn't even use 3D printers in the Danish Technical University back in '99. So things happen for a reason. Be brave and take risk, work hard, and somehow you can connect the dots later. But you cannot be scared.
Hmm. Have you scared of anything in your life?
I think I think it's always. I think, let me rephrase that. Everybody is afraid, right? And it's normal. Otherwise, you won't be human. So when you lose a job, you're always afraid in the moment. But it's kind of funny that when I look back at things that happened, I was supposed to um, go to Malaysia for Intel. That didn't work out due to politics, and my boss took the job, and I almost had no job. So if Intel couldn't get the approval to move me to the US, I had no job. So the waiting time was scary, but I ended up going to the US. And when I worked with the 3D system, I advised them to buy my older company Z Corp. When they did, they fired me. And so that is nerve wracking when you have a baby. And that was scary. You need to have medical and dental healthcare, right? But I ended up working for an Israeli company that 4 months later then decided to merge with Stratasys, become one of the biggest company in 3D printing in the world. So I would say it is normal to be um, scared. There will be time, especially with unemployment, but you got to have faith and you have to contain that this is normal, this is okay, this is momentarily, it will not be forever. And comfort yourself that maybe this bad thing happened is because this is my self belief that when bad things happen to me, it's because I'm not doing being where I'm supposed to be. So had I made those changes and move, I would not have endured this. So so that drive me is maybe my destiny. It's a little bit of weird. I grew up most of my life thinking I have control of my life. I want to go to the US, but I have full control of my life. I can go A, I can go B, but somehow as I grow older, I have to concede and be humble that maybe there is greater powers, that you do have a destiny, that you were meant to meet a certain person or work at a certain job and do certain things and say yes to certain adventures to become who you're supposed to be. I thought I had control of my life, but I really don't. So when you're thinking yourself like a small boat in the ocean, the wind can come from any different direction. But if you have a vision, you want to cross the ocean or having a dream, a direction, it doesn't matter what happens or what you suffer as long as you stay the course. It is more scary, those challenges or nervousness or afraidness, nothing is more scary than not having a direction because you will go nowhere. That is actually more terrifying to me, not having a dream or direction. I always have to throw some personal milestones, career milestones ahead of me, what I want to do next. Because if I don't have a carrot, something to work towards, um, I stop. I'm dying inside because I'm not moving, I'm not learning. But if it forces you to read magazine you don't read, get to know people you don't normally get to know, but expand your comfort zone, reading other stuff. Actually, the more you do that, the more you find, the more you know, the more you know you don't know. Does that make sense? And if it's interesting, then you keep learning. And so I would say for this podcast, I would say it starts with yourself. That um, I was definitely meant to live in the US because when you are afraid, um, the American have a way of saying fake it till you make it. Take a job and then find out how to do it. I was scared. I only knew that girl in the US, right? And I took the money, so I didn't move my stuff. I packed 3 bags that I could carry in for free because I have gold status. But I started a new life with just a girl and left everybody, all my friends, my parents, my brothers, in a new country, a new environment, a new political system, and starting from scratch. But that is actually the definition of entrepreneurship. That they are by heart a risk taker. I work for. I was talking to quote one of my former boss, Rick Fuller. He said, actually, the best entrepreneur, if you look back, is actually all immigrants. The biggest unicorns in US history were all immigrants because they have that fire and energy. And they will outwork people and they will hire people who are smarter than them, and they will do very well. So to my all my overseas Vietnamese, you are already graduated as entrepreneurs. What you want to do with that is up to you, but you already have an advantage over people who have a comfort life, a comfort Ivy League education, all that. They don't have your fire. They don't know what is hardship. They don't know not knowing where you will live and how you will, who you are and how you will raise your kid and how to find your spouse. So you have already have an advantage. Don't
Mm.
misuse that. Use that.
Wow, thank you so much. I think it's very, empowering, very inspired what you that share. And also sometimes I think about, when you're an immigrant, like basically you have nothing and you cannot go lower. So the only way you can go is higher. Like you have to look forward and you have to move forward to whatever might come in the future. You try like many different things. And I mean, like, very thank you for you to sharing that and, for what you have been through. And you talk about, the most scary thing in you is like not having a direction or not having a dream. And I have seen that nowadays, like the young generation, they have so many choice. They want to do so many things, but at the end of the day, they might not know what actually they want to do. So, with all of your experience and your life, do you have any kind of advice, or maybe you can share with us what have you done to find your direction or your true dream?
Yeah. So it's quite unique. It goes a little bit to everybody should read the Seven Habits of Highly Successful People. One of those seven habits is starting with the end in mind. Start with the end and work backwards. So it's a very personal story. I was 14. I was a teenager, and like everybody, cold winter in Scandinavia, Denmark, I got a cold, right, and I need antibiotics. Unlucky for me, the doctor prescribed a penicillin that I had an allergic reaction, and I was hospitalized. They didn't know it was the kidney or what it was, and that's probably, I would say, that's probably the most scary part of my life, is when you're this young, not knowing your identity, and you're in a dark hospital in Denmark, and not knowing, are they going to open you up, do surgery, a gallbladder, whatever it is. They didn't know it was an allergic reaction. So this fake, now it has. So I was never really in danger, but in my mind, they were prepping me for surgery in case. Turns out it was just allergic reaction to that medicine, and that faded away. But that that make me think, when you are so near death experience. Lucky mine was not really near death, a car crash, but I thought I was. People can die doing surgery, right? So in my mind, this was my near death. When you have this near death, especially more troubles than in teenage years, you're like, well, God, if I live, what would I make of this one life? Um, what would I do with my life? So actually, the reason why you don't ask me this question is because it's not normal. But you can actually ask me what I will do when I retire. Not many people have that already, that answer. So later in life, I studied, I read about autobiography, reading about other famous, accomplished people, and the Panasonic CEO of in Japan wrote about how he wanted to contribute to Japan and created the school, the Harvard of Japan, and groom leadership to direct for a better Japan. So actually, my if you ask my question, so my dream is when I retire to have enough wealth and influence to open a school to educate future leaders of the young Vietnamese, to really train, being one of the professor, but to found the Harvard of Vietnam, to groom new leaders to make a better Vietnam. And I will be in one of the departments, probably teaching about entrepreneurship, because that's what I know. But I think it's kind of funny. It's a country that I left when I was 5. I really owe more to Denmark, as a being, and as the way I grew up. But I'm still Vietnamese, and I will retire in Vietnam. Also, money will last longer in Vietnam than in the U.S. But that's a practical. But I think I will. I was born Vietnamese, and I will die Vietnamese. I can't imagine living in any other country for my retirement. I think that will be my where I want to die. So relating to that, right? So you work backwards. So if I want to have a school, I need a lot of money. I need to attract a lot of good professors. So I need to know a lot of people, a lot of famous people. I need to be able to raise a lot of money. So then you work backwards. That means I have to do very well in my career. I need to have money myself or get access to money to build the school. So then you work backwards. A lot of people is so to answer your question, a lot of the young people, if they don't do the exercise of what could they be doing when they retire, then they don't have an end goal. Then they just go with whatever comes, and it's never good enough. And they keep jumping, and all that is fine. You can jump between buses and trains as long as you have an end destination or some idea. You want to go west, you want to go east, but you got to have some direction, because otherwise you're just jumping in circles. So whatever that direction is, have a destiny, a destination, and work towards that. You can always change that, but always have a destination in mind. Otherwise, it's like being on a plane with no destination. You're going to run out of fuel, out of energy, out of resources, out of money, and you will crash and burn. So
Mm.
to answer your question, I think most people is they don't have a destination, even temporarily.
Yeah, but I mean, for example, now when we are too young, we might not know, okay, where do we want to go? We might see the world through the eye of some adults. So they tell them, okay, Germany is very beautiful, come here to learn. American is very great, opportunities, and so on. So they view their life through other eyes or glasses. And if you're in that case, because I see that you have been to different country, meet different people, so how do you know exactly what is for you or what you want to do?
Excellent question. I would say um, this is already a huge achievement, is to be honest with yourself. Be really honest with what you like, what you don't like, what inspire you. Because if you're not honest with yourself, doesn't matter where you work or who you work with, you will never be happy because you're not honest with yourself. So, give you an example. My second job, I knew nothing about semiconductor, optical conversion to electricity. I knew nothing about the company. I didn't know about semiconductor or Intel, AMCC. But I took the job. Why? Because it was in Asia. I love photography. I love to travel. I get to meet my family in Vietnam, and I'm running Asia. So, so stay true to what you love and like and to do. No matter what job you do, if you have the things that personally fulfills you, you're already successful. Because if you already enjoy traveling and being in Asia, and work is work, but if you love being there, it is already the ingredients of success, because you are in the environment that you want to do. Does that make sense? That I didn't take the job because of the title, the money, all that is great. I didn't care what product it was. It was just I can work in Asia. I can travel in Asia. I can have my weekends. I can take a lot of pictures, which is was my original passion, um, and I get closer to my roots, and in some way also to discover more the beauty of my heritage beyond just Vietnam, but amongst Asian. What are the different Asian? The Philippine, the Vietnamese, the Taiwanese, the Indian. So being in where I think my internship practice experience in Denmark, so in Hanoi in '97, opened my eyes to there was a lot of value for overseas Vietnamese to come back to Vietnam. Meaning that, so I asked them why did they grant me this opportunity to fly back to Hanoi, and I work for a Danish engineering company called Intertech. So all the Danes, the Vikings, were all the leaders, right? And then all the smart engineers, all the middle management, they were all from the Malaysia or Philippines, right? Because they were
Mm-hmm.
educated university, and all the workers were Vietnamese. Of course, they're team leaders and all that. And their hypothesis is the future of Vietnam having a hybrid where you can have somebody like Tuấn Anh who can speak Danish within a day at all three levels, can speak Danish, English, and Vietnamese on the fly and switch. So I got really a lot of practice in switching between languages on the moment, continuously, and that helped you to think very structurally and compartmentalize and expand your vocabulary. So that was, I was at my internship is many different ways of rewarding and being back in Vietnam and improve my Vietnamese, but it was also a language opportunity to hone in and perfect. Switching between two languages is already difficult, but switching between three, that was definitely a challenge. But it was very rewarding.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely, I can imagine how difficult that is because now sometimes I do have to speak three different languages: German, English, and Vietnamese. And I think German and Danish is more or less, is Latino languages, so it's have like some similar part. But yeah, I think it's very interesting, like your story, and I mean, you do know the purpose of taking a job before you're saying yes. It's kind of okay, I took this because of that. So it's very clear for me. So I think is you have like the excellent connection with your inner self. It's like enough for you to know, okay, what do you really want, what do you really love, and what do you have to satisfy in order to get what you want. So I guess that is something it takes a lot of practice, and I bet that you have a lot of time to spend yourself when you're living abroad.
Yeah. So give you an example. When I joined Desktop Metal, it was a small company. Or either way, use LinkedIn. I can tell you, I don't have a resume, because honestly, my last 3 4 job came through LinkedIn. So to answer your question, when I took the Desktop Metal job, it was a startup. Nobody knew it. I worked for a Swedish company, because as a Danish person, I understand a lot of Swedish. So and they got acquired by GE Additive. So I could have stayed there, but I joined a tiny startup, and they needed. So I have been in sales, in distributor, reseller, inside sales. So I've done most of those tier, but always having somebody overall for all the commercial, all the sales, and all the revenue, right? So that's a metal. I took the job because I knew a lot about metal 3D printing, but he wanted a go-to-market strategy. How do we sell this product for this startup that nobody knows? Uh, I never worked for a small startup. I never done a go-to-market strategy. I never hire a sales team, application team, and service team. But I knew a lot of people. I knew who are good that I could hire to delegate and build that for me. I knew enough about the industry, the price point, the budget, how we could sell it. There were multiple products, so I had the ingredients, but I never put them all together as a package and then do that. So I took the job as a VP of business development for Desktop Metal, and later grew up to be the chief revenue officer, running the sales, marketing, and customer service, and really, but the more fun part was marketing and branding. So it was actually Richard Branson, the founder of Virgin, who said, when you're not sure about a job opportunity, take it and find out how to do the job. So yeah, when you are, um, I would say the difference between successful people and not successful people is successful people actually work harder, meaning that a lot of people at night after dinner, when you're done at 7 or 8 p.m., what do you do with your life? I can tell you, for years and decades, from 8 p.m. to midnight, I don't watch Netflix. I don't watch TV. I do it reluctantly now, recently with my son for entertainment, but I was investing in my career and my future. I was studying on new areas. I was studying on leadership. I was studying on communication. I don't have time, so I read executive book summary, the sound view executive summary of the key learnings or takeaways from all the best business book in the world, and they're always 8 pages. So when I will be flying, by now 19 years into 3D printing, I've flown over 2 million miles. So I don't know how many, 50 times around the planet. You have a lot of time in the plane, and I always have a always educating myself, creating my curriculum. If you think you're done studying when you finish university, you are dying, because people like me, we are inventing, creating, enhancing our own curriculum to improve ourselves. So I have a legal folder with 8 pins, and I had 8 books about leadership. Then next year about communication. Some will be marketing. Some will be sales. Some will be about structured problem solving. So I always have a theme. So I design my own curriculum, and by doing so, I have so much more tools. But remember, whatever you read, you don't implement some of those learning within 3 days, 72 hours. You're wasting your time. So actually, I read stuff that I needed in my career and actually use that on my employees or my colleagues or on my peers. So always be studying, always be investing yourself. How successful you want to be, well, how much effort are you willing to put into it? Everybody want to be a black belt, but nobody is willing to do the work. It takes a lot of work, and you have to be committed and passionate about it, because there will be days, I say passion, because there will be days you don't feel like doing it, but it takes discipline. So so another thing that I grew up when people say, "Oh, just find your passion and you'll be happy." It's like I don't know what my passion is. It's kind of funny, right? I mentioned 3D printing is my accidental passion, but I never discovered it until much later in my life when I was like 29, 30 years old. So I was like, I had no chance of finding my passion. So my personal opinion about passion is that it, it is not clear unnecessary passion. In my opinion, passion is like a marriage, is a commitment, is a choice, it's something you believe in, it's something you want to be part of. So I didn't know 3D printing. My now wife, her friend's friend was the financial control Z Corp, and they needed somebody to work and run Asia Pacific for them. And he said, "Just come have lunch. Let me show you the tech. What is a 3D printer?" This is 2002. Okay, this is 20 years ago. Okay, it's like, yeah, and I'm engineer. Like, what is a 3D printer? But when I saw the machine 3D printer, glue and powder, just super gluing it together, and you have a ball bearing like Indiana Jones excavating a box of powder, and you have a ball bearing and put super glue, and it's in full color. Actually, this is actually the start of my passion. In the beginning, it was
Oh,
just
nice.
white. It was,
Uh-huh.
but to be able to do this 20 years ago, to have a physical prototype, it was my moment where I was like, "Oh my god, this is going to be the future," and I want to be part of that. So I joined them in the summer of 2003, and I thought, well, in 5 years at least, everybody will know what a 3D printer is. It took a little bit longer than 5 years.
Yeah, but I think it's now super popular. I love how you talk about the story because I can see like you're proud when you talk about it. You were smiling and the energy will like really, like explore. And I have a question that I would like to ask all the guests that I talk to, which is, you know, if you could talk one thing to yourself after all of the year that you have been through, what would that be?
I would say it's stay true to yourself, be brave, uh, say yes to opportunities, and find out how to do it later. Um, so so I would say, yeah, stay calm. Everything will be okay, because life is a journey, and there will be ups and downs, and do enjoy the journey. I do want to make one advice to all younger professionals. Is a different way of answering your question. What is the one thing I wish somebody taught me in school that no teacher taught me? I wish that somebody have told me this. So this is my advice. This is to my younger self. Is when you do go out into the world and get a real job or getting a job, make it interesting. Enjoy the journey. So therefore, no teacher told me, when you do get a job, get it in an industry that is young, alive, potential, exciting, versus a very mature. Do you want to sell Colgate? Do you want to sell napkins? or do you want to sell semiconductor, or do you want to sell a 3D printer? So whatever it is, sales is still sales, marketing is still marketing. So whatever you do, I wish somebody would have told me, when you do get a job, try to get into an industry that has potential of explosive growth and grow with it. It is fine to jump between companies, but it is so hard to jump between industry and verticals, because different trade show, different magazine, different relationship and networking and Rolodex is so powerful. Most of my successes has been because my extensive network, but I jumped last 19 years. I can say it has worked for me, that even though in 19 years I have worked for 8 3D printing manufacturer, not customer, not reseller, not service bureau, manufacturer. That was the type of I want to create. I want to be part of getting money and create and sell a product. But staying within just 3D printing has enabled me to leverage my relationship and hire my former colleague, still know all the media, know all the financial analysts, know all the trade show, and having a voice, and becoming a thought leader is has definitely benefited me versus jumping. It was so hard to go from semiconductor, that enabled me to go to America, to move from semiconductor to 3D printing. There was a lot of things I couldn't. It wasn't even the same trade show, the same journalist. I had to restart. So be mindful of getting a job in an industry that has growth potential. Is it just going 5% selling Colgate, or fork and knife, or is it a high tech, deep tech? Make it interesting, but also try to try, if it's an interesting enough and growing, that stay within the same industry and becoming a thought leader in that industry. So when I joined 3D printing 19 years ago, the whole industry annually was not even a billion in revenue. 1 billion was not even 19 years ago. Now it has grown nicely, and it's about 14 billion. But potentially, because it's part of the fourth industrial revolution. Well, so here's the shortcut. So where do I find this growth vertical? Well, here's a shortcut. Look at the fourth industrial revolution. Look at the technology. It's AI, blockchain, sensor, IoT, 3D printing, automation. So if you look at the fourth industrial revolution, those area is going to be the future that is predicted. So if you within those range, they will probably be in the growth area of where jobs will be. And if things goes well, I would still be in 3D printing.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that, what a ride, and you have been through so many things and tried different things, definitely with 3D printer. And I think that is very valuable advice to the young audience who are listening to my podcast. And, I'm only curious about, okay, you are today, and the little boy left Vietnam many years ago. Do you see what are the differences?
I'm having a lot more fun. Uh, it's still in the back of my mind. But I think that, lucky for me, the industry that I'm in has grown a lot the last 20 years. But if you look about high tech, most new technologies, including the internet, including the iPhone, including airplanes and cars, it takes about 50 years to really mature. Even the internet started 50 years ago. That's why we're seeing the peak right now. So 3D printing is about 37 years. So the next 14 years, the next decade, I will see this little curious boy who is adventurous, who will say yes to everything, and 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 always. So the reason you didn't ask me why I work at so many different countries and continents is because I chose to be a citizen of the world. I'm not a Danish guy, a Vietnamese guy, and be confined to one region or one country or one language. I'm a citizen of the world, so I want to see the best of the world. And I've been educating my son. He's been to Australia, to Cape Town in South Africa. He's been to Ushuaia in Patagonia, the southern tip, as close as you can to the South Pole without going to the South Pole. So think bigger. Don't never limit yourself. The world is your oyster, they say. The world is your playground. Get to know it. Personally, uh, Fun fact is, I love architecture, and I wanted for years that I travel. I want to see all the seven wonders of the world, from the Opera House to the in Siem Reap, Angkor Wat, or Kinkakuji, the Golden Pavilion in Kyoto, or the pyramids of Petra, um, or Machu Picchu. So actually, they changed that 5-7 years ago. Did a new seven wonders of the world, but actually I went through all of them. So I need to find a new bucket list, because I've visited all this seven new wonders of the world and the seven old wonders of the world. So I need to find new things to travel to see the beauty of the world. So I think my new thing is the top 10 waterfalls of the world. So I've done between Argentina and Brasilia the Iguazu Fall, probably multiple waterfalls. I did that, and then Niagara Falls. I think I'll need to go to Africa again. I need to go to Victoria Falls. So probably the top 10 waterfalls of the world is my next destination.
Yeah, definitely. I really like traveling as well, and I can't wait to, all the COVID is kind of end now, so we can start traveling again. And yeah, so thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. And I hope that everybody, learned a lot from you, like what I have done. And thank you so much. And do you want to say some, like last words to the audience, like who are listening to this podcast and, finding the way to find their own passions?
I would say we are special. We, as overseas Vietnamese, we were probably supposed to have a normal life in Vietnam. So if you look at this as a second chance, a new opportunity, a new life, it's just like when you go on vacation or you take a job in a different country. You're there for 2 years or 1 year or 2 months. Enjoy it. It's a new life that you would not uh, have experienced. So we are unique. We are adventurous. We ended up Vietnamese in different countries, but we learned different cultures. But all that makes us valuable. So that I can tell you this: Vietnam will be not a superpower, but will be a very strong commercial partner on the global scale. And imagine all us young Vietnamese coming back with knowledge and know-how from France, from Germany, from Australia, from Denmark, from the US. We bring that know-how, that money, that you're already starting to see entrepreneurship and startup boom in Vietnam. So imagine someday we meet again in Vietnam. What what of know-how transfer back to Vietnam? What a super country Vietnam could be. So I was born in Vietnam. I didn't spend much time there, but I still believe in Vietnam, and I want to not do right, but I want to contribute to the growth of Vietnam. That makes me happy. It's not about money, title, success. In my opinion, it's what you leave behind when you die, making a difference, making an impact. If not, then you are not remarkable. You've done made no difference.
Yeah, I think that is very, powerful words and very, inspired for young people like me or like so many other listeners. And again, thank you so much for joining the podcast with me today, and thank you for sharing all of that. And I wish you all the best for your industry and also for your job, and continue enjoy your life, and you will very soon visit all 10 top waterfall.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure and I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Các bạn có thể tìm thấy Du Học Chữa Lành trên các trang mạng xã hội như Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Apple Podcast và Spotify. Mọi thắc mắc và chia sẻ xin vui lòng gửi về địa chỉ email duhocchữa lành@gmail.com. Tạm biệt và hẹn gặp lại mọi người trong những số phát sóng lần sau.